All right. Call this meeting to order. We can stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Yoder.
Here.
Noonan, absent prior notice. Black.
Here.
Brown, absent prior notice. Fresh.
Here.
Fenlon. Absent. Louder. Present. McDonald.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Nixon.
Here.
Ricky, absent prior notice.
All right. So Brown, he was here.
He was here.
He has to take a leave since we had a farm.
Good. All right, we have a quorum. Next up, we have our agenda in front of us. Any additions or deletions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Made by Mr. Brush, is there support?
Yes.
Supported by Mr. Black. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next up, we have conflict of interest. Any members on here have a conflict with any items on the agenda here tonight? Not, we will move on to public comment. Being, they'll just speak when we come to our agenda item.
For me?
We'll just speak during the agenda item, I guess.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Appreciate it.
Well, only if you have questions.
All right. Appreciate you being here. Next up, staff comments.
I don't have anything.
Nothing. All right. We'll move right along. Next up, we have our minutes. The June 25th meeting. Chance to review those. Take a motion.
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
All right, motion made by Mr. McDonald, supported by Mr. Miller. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We have no old business, new business. We have the Cleveland Township text amendment, parks and private conservation natural areas. I will let staff lead us off in their report and then we'll go on to comments from there.
So I received this request from Cleveland Township on July 3rd. And the last date to review under the 30-day review period is August 2nd. The requested action is to review and comment on the proposed amendments to Cleveland Township zoning ordinance, Article 9, agricultural district. Under Section 3, Township Plan, the Cleveland Township Master Plan lists the following goal under the heading Agriculture in Chapter 6. Goals, objectives, and action steps. Protect agricultural lands and enhance rural character in Cleveland Township. Action step 2 under the same heading reads as follows: continue to allow agricultural lands to benefit from tourism and reduce barriers to additional opportunities as appropriate, provided they do not adversely affect neighbors or the serene rural nature of the area. Also, the goal under the heading environment reads: protect natural features that make Cleveland Township a special place to live. Objective 6 under the same heading reads: protect the natural environment from the negative impacts of human actions, including air quality, shoreline activities, soil erosion, vibration, and other negative impacts. And the Leelanau General Plan states the following in Chapter 3, Working with Nature, under the heading Policy Guidelines, Working with Nature. Extensive and diverse sensitive natural features found throughout the county provide the foundation for the present and the future quality of life in the county. They should be protected where pristine, restored where damaged, and have access and use managed for long-term sustainability. The Township Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 3rd, at which time one member of the public questioned the procedure for reporting a violation. After the public hearing was closed, they passed a motion to adopt the zoning amendments and forward on to the county for review. So, moving on to the history. At a Township Planning Commission meeting in June of 2023, residents expressed concern over the developments going on by the Conservancy at Palmer Woods and the lack of zoning. At the July Township Planning Commission meeting, the residents supplied suggested zoning amendments for consideration. And since that time, the township has worked on a proposed amendment. We have 2 sections in Article 9 Agricultural District. The proposed amendment will add a new section 9.12 parks and private conservation natural areas to Article 9. They will add definitions for park and private conservation natural area. Also in this new section 9.12, the following uses will be added to define the allowable uses under 9.01H. Moving on to the next page. This new section 9.12 add the following use restrictions to define use restrictions for non-property owners under 9.01H. Proposed amendment will also add a new section 9.13 private forest to Article 9 Agricultural District. Definitions and standards conditions will be added for the following to define conditions for allowable uses under 9.01C. Private forest, forestry use for forestry operations, standards and conditions. Moving on, staff notes that the motion made following the public hearing recommends adoption of zoning amendments, section 9.13, parks and private conservation natural areas, and section 9.14, private forests. Staff receives zoning amendment, section 9.12, and a zoning amendment labeled section 9.13 and 9.14, private forests. Might be something to look at.
Going with Commissioner comments, Commissioner Wagner, you wanna hit it off?
Under section 9.12H, the no fireworks or explosives. There's a state law that allows day before holiday and holiday. So would this override the state law?
That's it.
Yep, you wanna,
Private property.
you wanna come up to
Oh.
here that way?
Oh, it's okay, so if you consider this private, even though it's because it's conservancy, it's private property, they can set their own. Even though they're opening it up to public. Same then with fires, they just no fires that have. I think that was all.
Mr. Brush?
I do have some clarifications I'd like and some comments I'd like to make. Under environment, which would be. The wording special place to live. I guess I'm a little concerned about that because what is that to me? What is that to you? What does that mean? And then also we had in here protect from negative human impacts. I'm a little concerned about that. What does that mean? What is negative to one person? What is negative to another? And then also you had quality of life. Well, what is quality of life to one person or to another? Those seem to be gray areas that could run into some confusion. The problem with a law or rule is when you write it, then you have to enforce it equally. And when you have vague interpreted definitions like this, you know, it makes it harder to enforce, I guess. Under agritourism, under positive, let's see if I can find it. I lost my place here, so. Anyway, I just wanted to say that under agritourism, you know, I'm on the board here for tourism, and yes, that helps to make it a viable, ongoing, and to possibly keep it into agricultural by allowing some of that agritourism in the sections that they talked about here. Under parks and private, section 6. Yes, here's 6, A and B definitions. Private conservation, natural area. But if it's private, then is it, you know, public enjoyment? I mean, it just seems to be a little confusing, I guess, because what are you trying to do here? And then, yeah, in restrictions, you know, under I, no, let's see, where's the restrictions page? This doesn't seem to match up with what I had at home here, but. Yeah, excuse me, L, that was my mistake, sorry. Under L, under the restrictions, no person shall engage in activities related to noise. Well, if you look above, hunting was allowed, but then noise isn't. So I question that, because then that can cause a consternation point there. And 9.13, which was parks and conservation, can't cut more than 5 trees of a certain diameter and a certain height. If it's a private forest, why are we telling them how many trees they can and can't cut and of what size? For instance, I own 40 acres, not in this township, of course, but I own 40 acres, and if I want to cut more than 5 trees for some reason, what's the point of that, having this kind of there? You know what I'm saying? So it's, I guess I had a little bit of a concern about some of those items.
All right. We'll go through all commissioner comments and then we'll let you, or do you want to address any of those right now, or do you want to do it later when everybody had a chance?
What would you prefer?
We'll go through everybody and then we'll come back to you, and it looks like you're jotting it down.
If I can remember.
All right. Mr. Miller.
I just see a couple little things that can raise the question in my mind. Recognizing the national park has a great presence in Cleveland Township. And the national park is not covered by your rules anyways. But we go and we say visitors may use park and private conservation natural area free fines or fees, excuse me. Well, I know you're not governing the national park, but if the Conservancy finds that they're not raising enough money and have to raise fees, do we really want to govern their rules? So that's the question in my mind, is whether zoning should get involved in fees. We reference no snowmobiles or other motorized off-road vehicles. That would suggest that an electric trail bike is allowed in one place and not allowed in another. I'm not sure how you address that, but an electric bike has a motor. the idea of, you can't have a pet unless it's on a leash not exceeding 10 foot in length. You see these guys with the retractable leashes all the time. I would say the vast majority of them go more than 10 feet in length, so, and who's gonna check? So it's like, should we just maintain a on leash? Not 10 foot. Oh, yeah, it goes, in which, actually, should be talking about this now, we're not on page 17. That it be reported to police if violation is seen by a neighbor who is reporting and how it's reported. This is part of your discussion and the answers, so it's not really part of the revised, but it said, reported to the Leelanau Conservancy and Caleb, not sure how to pronounce his last name. And then it was repeat the issue. The Leelanau Conservancy will communicate issues with the Leelanau Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department doesn't normally get involved in zoning ordinances. The violation of the zoning ordinance is not something the sheriff can deal with. Yeah. If it's written up as an ordinance.
Since you're asking me directly. should I talk?
No,
Just
that's
get up to the table here, that way.
fine, I appreciate it.
staff can
Well, I,
get to this properly.
this is a private property. So that's why that question came up. Caleb is a conservancy, works for them, but he also lives in that neighborhood. And working with Tom, and other conservancy properties that are in our township. We know the conservancy likes to go first. If they're having trouble getting people to cooperate, they do call the police because they can trespass people.
okay, so then it's not.
It's a private
It's not that
property.
they're violating the zoning ordinance, it's the fact that they're
Vi-
not abiding by the rules of the owner.
Correct.
Okay. Different animal.
Okay.
I'm sure what we do. That's it.
All right, Mr. Nixon.
This really pertains to private property, not to public property. Okay, so I had a similar concern about fees, but I would address that in terms of a public facility. People using that facility for personal profit, I think is a very sketchy issue.
Right.
And I looked at it because I thought that you added the definition of park in here. And I'm wondering if it would be a little clearer to folks if you talked about private parks and private conservation natural areas. If you added the word private, that would just add some clarity to the reader. And I thought the definition for private forest was interesting. Obviously, you were attempting to cover everything and anything. I would suggest you might look at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's definition of forestry. And let me just read that to you. It says 1 acre or greater in size, at least 120 feet wide, and has at least 10% tree cover, or formerly had such tree cover and is capable of regrowing those trees. That's my understanding what the United States uses as a definition for a forest. But there are unlimited numbers, and being creative in definitions is one of the advantages of serving on a planning commission. But I thought yours was quite imposing and quite interesting.
Well, I can't take credit for it.
Okay, I'm just using you generic.
No, we got it from Crystal Lake. We worked with our area for the district forester.
You did.
Yeah, Ellie Johnson was, who
Interesting.
worked us, and she steered us to these definitions.
Well, there
That's what you
are-
provided.
There are numerous ones. but
Yeah,
when
yeah.
when I think about it's not defined by size. that-
Correct.
That means it's in the eyes of the beholder. And I could understand a forest may include woodlands, woodlots, windbreaks, shelter bed. You could go through a lot of vegetation things. But the sentence here struck me. A forest could be a very, it doesn't even say narrow, it says very narrow strip of planted trees along a property line. That's gonna cause some hardship for some people. Or a small patch, and we have to define what patch means of hardwoods. And I think your definition might serve better if you deleted those last things I recited. And I would agree with Mr. Bush's remarks about the section under standards and conditions, section B, that a property owner can remove without a permit up to 5 trees per calendar year. That's becomes an enforcement issue of sorts. And if really what you're trying to get to is making sure there aren't a lot of trees removed. Because I think this, to me, was at the heart of a lot of the concern that originated the frustrations. That maybe you just stick to a simple statement of at no time will more than 30% of the trees be removed. Rather than getting into those daily kind of things. I guess that would be Albert's remarks.
All right, Mr. Wyatt.
I really appreciated all the work you put into this. For one thing, that a neighbor of mine has some conservancy property up there from me, and I was reading that part about hiking on private forest land. And I'm not sure if I'm aware of all the rules. Glad to see the took time to locate the rules, but the removal of 5 trees, I believe that is in your standard policy of conservancy of the land, right? Have to get permit to go beyond 5 trees.
That's what we're at right now, right?
Jack, when he owned the land, he sold it, but he wanted to take more trees out there with letting. There was a limitation on the trees he could take, but I like what's there, except for the fact when it says they can hike on this without fees. I don't think there's any fees ever gonna be involved really because of the fact it's privately owned. I know that when I go hiking in deer season, if I want to hike on his property up through there to get to another location, I always ask permission, which I think is pretty standard. But basically, I can see really no real fault with this. Yes, there may be some ambiguity with some of the things that people might or might not want to do, but I like it. That's what it is.
No,
My comment was gonna be related to the enforcement issue with the sheriff, but it's like we have that resolved. It's private.
all right, did you have anything else you want to respond to? Prior questions or statements at all, or?
Well, we wanted to avoid commercialization, so we wanted to make sure this was a no fee operation. And of course, we were writing it with conservancy in mind, but other people might want to do it who aren't the conservancy. So we didn't want people to start opening in the ag area for hiking and start making a commercial enterprise, put up booths, and we're just trying to keep it as quiet as possible. Yeah, I liked a lot of, I mean, the leash issue, the 5 trees, that was a long discussion. And I thought Bob DeCorn was gonna show up. He lives right next door to the property. He owns, I don't know, 40 acres or something too. And that's what he said. he's one who said that would be a good mark, because I don't need any more than that for my heating in the winter. But yeah, we could look at, I'll bring that up, but that, we did talk about that. We said, is that, and he was our expert, he was the landowner, and he said that was a good number to put in there. Because yeah, it's, enforcement's always the issue with zoning, especially when you have a very part-time zoning administrator. So we're just trying to give guidance to people, and just so you can mention it. If you see your neighbor going crazy, you can say, what are you doing? And that because when this all came up over a small parking lot, we were making the point that that hill could have been totally clear cut. There was nothing to stop someone from doing that. And we, all of a sudden, we're all like, whoa, that would not be nice. That would really affect every neighbor in the whole area. And there's nothing in there. So that's what we were really about, is trying to get limits on, because we've seen it and how devastating it can be. And so that was the intention in there.
By clear cut again.
Pardon me?
By clear cut, it could have been clear cut probably again. It was probably clear cut 100 years ago.
Could have been.
50 years ago.
Yeah, but we've learned a lot since then. I mean, we know that that's not good forestry practice, not good for any of the other neighbors, any of the property, any of the water. It's not good practice. So we've learned over the last 100 years to be smarter about how we manage our woods, our forests, for everyone's benefit. Because you clear cut it and then you sell it, someone else, I mean, you've degraded that property. And if you just move on, you've really degraded the property. So that's why the forestry, that's why we worked with the forester. And so she sent us a lot and came into one of our meetings and worked with us on the section.
Are you talking just strictly about parcels that are in your conservation group,
No, they're in the ag district. This is the
Okay,
whole ag district.
and which I, once again, no offense, but I have a issue with that because like my house in a different township would fall under that. And I mean, I've got 8 acres of apple trees in there that have now grown up, and if I decide to take those out and plant something else, I mean, I don't,
That's an exclusion. If you're doing it for no clearing for pasture land, crops, etc., adhering to the state of Michigan's Right to Farm Act and its generally accepted agricultural management practices is allowed without a permit. So if you are using it agriculturally and you want to clear for pasture land, no one's going to say a word to you. We're more concerned about the commercial lumbering businesses that come in, clear it, leave trash behind, ruin the hillside, erosion into our stream. There's nothing to stop that.
Yeah, my neighboring 40 had that done a few years ago. I understand, but it's also been done multiple times on that 40 in the past, but it was done again just a few years ago. And yeah.
Did you have a forester work with you?
It wasn't me, it was the neighbors.
Oh, the neighbor.
Yeah.
And we're not saying you can't do that. We're just saying how you do it. There's good practices to maintain that forest. And yet my neighbor just harvested a whole bunch and they used a forester, so it was.
But also, he owns it, pays the taxes on it, it's his property.
Correct.
I mean, I don't mean to be adversarial here, I'm just trying to understand, I could understand, I mean, I almost bought a parcel that was in a conservation easement with you guys. And after reading the rules and regulations and so on that you had in place, I was fine with them for my purpose, but it was a lot of undue stress and rules I felt for the parcel, but I was fine with that. I didn't end up purchasing that parcel, but so I have seen it from the other side as potentially buying also. And there are certain spots that would be more, in my opinion, more beneficial for those kinds of rules and restrictions. On the other hand, like my current parcel, no, it doesn't, matter as much because of the nature of the parcel, so. Like I said in the beginning, the more rules and regulations you make, then you've got to enforce them and enforce them evenly and so on. Thank you.
But that's the essence of zoning. And without it, then each of us could do whatever we want, whatever we want, to whatever extent we want. And there's a certain freedom in that,
Mhm.
but we know what we would get if we did that. So I commend your township for
Yes.
being concerned about the devastation that could occur in large tracts of land.
Large tracts.
I just think you need to rethink that definition.
Any other questions from the board here?
Is there any reason that it's under agricultural and not like its own section or its own definition? To know where else you could put these two amendments?
Well, our only zoning district that allows harvesting of wood like that is the ag district. So that's where it went.
Don't you have a forestry section or a forested section or forest lands?
Just in the ag. We have other,
I'm with you on that. They're two separate animals, ag and conservation. While they have a lot of the same end goals, they have different practices. So if you don't have like a forestry section, I think like those, they would go into them.
Would that be a better discussion to have, is having a forestry zoning versus putting these in on agriculture?
our zoning, all of our zoning ordinances start with allowable uses. What are you allowed to do? The only place forestry practices are allowed is in the ag district, because it's the ag forest district. That's what it's called. It's a combination. So that's why we didn't have anything in there to give any guidance, to protect everyone's forest, not just one person's. So you're going to protect the whole neighborhood. Because that's what this was. The neighborhood came together and said, what's going on here? And because the Conservancy is a private owner, just like anyone else. And yet there were issues with what they were wanting to do, and luckily they're good neighbors and we worked well together.
Is it, are some of these pieces outright Conservancy owned, so they're off the tax rolls, and then some have Conservancy easements?
It
could be either
It could
one.
be either one. It doesn't matter. It's just in that district. It's an allowable use. Parks was an allowable use. We didn't have any definition for that. So that's why we wrote a definition. What is a park? That was an allowable use. So we needed to clarify that. Forestry was an allowable use. So we needed to clarify that. And that's what these two amendments do.
Did you want to speak to the e-bikes? No motorized?
That was a catch, because it says no motorized. So yeah, we're gonna have to bring that up. Because we do want to allow e-bikes, but we loved the lowest level of e-bikes, as the Conservancy does.
Yeah.
That allows access for people. It's an accessibility thing.
Well, then, excuse me, one more thing. And then you get into the electric wheelchairs and all of that. I mean,
That's all allowed, yeah.
Yeah.
That might be the way to do it, is electric motorized, different than combustion.
All right. You have one more thing? No? All right. Any other questions or statements? Not, we'll take a motion.
This to the board, as written. Comments passed along.
All right. Is there support?
Or
Motion made, Mr. Black, supported by Commissioner Lautner. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Dean. Appreciate you coming.
Do I get all this? Your work, you're gonna send your report to me?
The minutes with all the comments or the?
No, when you did your report for them, usually I would get that.
Yeah, I sent it to you.
You did?
Yeah.
That's what I was looking at when you talked to me. I'm all, it should probably be in my email. And
Yeah.
thank you all.
Yep, thank you. All right, next up, we have our annual planning session. It's on the agenda just to kind of get some ideas. I know Gail, before the meeting passed out paper with, some recommendations from Mary Riley from MSU. So hopefully everybody had a chance to review that. I guess we'll just see if anybody has any recommendations on what to do, to staff and see what we're gonna do with the fall. Commissioner Allen.
I heard a really good presentation on renewable energy by the Mackinac Center. And I'd like to hear it again. I thought it was very well done. And they're nonpartisan. He made that clear a couple different times. But he really knew what he was talking about. I think the subject, I think, would be good. And if we needed someone to present, I'll bet they would do it too. But that's just my thoughts on it. There's a lot of legislation going through. You could get Cherryland Electric could help present. Of course, our representatives probably could weigh in, and probably somebody from consumers could weigh in on some of that. That's my thoughts.
Mr. Rush, do you have any recommendations?
No.
All right, Mr. Miller.
The renewable energy, I think is, no pun intended, not a hot topic right now. Might be well addressed. A fair amount of confusion.
Okay. Mr. Nixon.
I'm sorry that MSU doesn't provide a focus on taxation and assessing value of property. There are a number of assessors in this area that might be willing to come and help us all understand what's current and what's in the future for property assessment and how they go about assessing and just an explanation of assessment. That would still be my preference, but I would certainly support any discussion on renewable energy as well.
Okay.
I echo that. Taxation would be my first as well, renewable energy second, but as you made me think about that, another facet to that might even be a banker. So many people, their mortgages, their taxes are rolled into their mortgages, the escrow, and they don't have a, understanding, but they may have some feedback too. I don't know.
Yeah, plus understanding the purpose of the board of review as it relates to assessment plan. There's a topic in there, I think, but whether there are resources that are credible enough to do that, I don't know.
I bet you will be.
All right, Mr. Black.
There's several things I'd like to see. I like the renewable energy, but I'd like to see that with the pros and cons of it, because I've been following it with interest in the Enterprise, the article written, the Our Readers Say section by the gentleman who I believe was an engineer, and he talked about the return on the dollar for the cost of putting in solar panels and that type of thing, and how many years you can recover your expense. I know when I looked at going with a different heating system when I lived down in Muskegon, I looked at the number of years it was going to take me to recover the cost of installing that system. And I chose not to go that route because of the number of years and not being a young man. And knowing that I thought probably would be moving within the next 5 years, I chose not to put that type of a heating system in. So I'd like to see if we did the renewable energy, the pros and cons. I would like to see somebody commenting on the pros and likewise the cons. And I like the short-term rental issue. It's a hot button with me because I guess going to Florida every year, I look into short-term rentals. And I believe our county is, I may be in the negative on, or the minority on this, I know that, but that doesn't change my opinion too much. I believe we are a tourist destination for a lot of people, and I think short-term rentals are critical. But I likewise can appreciate the location of them, the density, the having some guidelines like quiet times at certain hours, number of parking spaces available, those type of things in a short-term rental are critical. There's just a number of things I'd like to see us look at. And then, of course, the housing shortage for low-income people that have jobs that don't pay to the point where they can afford short-term rentals that are really exorbitant. These are issues I'd love to see in this kind of a meeting. I think you're give us some ideas and guidance as to our future, what we approve and disapprove of, that type of thing. No, sir.
All right, Mr. McDonald?
Nothing.
Yeah, it does seem like renewable energy is a hot topic, just with everything that's been going on, and I mean, from what I'm reading here, it looks like there's a lot of changes gonna take effect in November, so it might be, you know, pretty cool and the essence of time to kind of bring up to speed a lot of how units of government regulate that, or how they can or cannot, I guess, so. So yeah, I certainly have no problem with going that direction if that's what the majority of the PC feels like we need to do, I guess, so. Unless anybody has anything other than what's on that sheet there, that you have any better recommendations. Guess not. So it sounds like general consensus is kind of renewable energy is kind of what it seems like, so it's kind of like where everybody's kind of, or their interest is at least, so I guess you can let Mary know that. Do we have a date picked out yet or no? I can't remember. We did. So, yeah, I mean, I guess if that date doesn't work or whatever, I guess just work with Mary, because I'm assuming she'll help teach
What
this,
is the
so.
date?
Yeah.
Can't remember what the date was. Yeah, some reason I had September in my mind.
It was September.
Was it the Monday before?
Oh, the September the 25th is what I got on my calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if you want to work with Mary on that,
Okay.
go from there.
Do that.
Yes, so. All right, any other questions on that item?
Just we might want to market that kind of as a renewable energy update. Rather than just simply a topic on renewable energy, because you got on that. And I think the idea of an update word would help people flag it and realize there's something else happening.
Don't we open that up to various townships?
Everything.
Good, super.
Yeah, I think update's the key there because, yeah, we, like Tom said, we just did it not too long ago, but there's been a lot of changes in just the last 2 years in the state legislature as to how this goes, so. All right, next up, we have reports, Housing Action Committee. We have a meeting there. Cancel.
Is it of interest for that or not?
Well, just kind of a communication thing.
Okay.
Interest.
Yeah, we have not met, so.
All right,
Nothing too much.
Parks and Rec,
Parks and Rec does not meet in July.
Well, I thought I saw a special, meeting. Oh, that's parts, yeah, 25th.
There might be a committee.
Yeah, I saw it on the board up here.
I saw that too.
It might be a committee
Yeah,
of a park.
it's on the board up there.
all right. Next up, we have communications. On that front.
I just have an article on the unhoused, that was interesting. And then some survey results, or housing survey results for Leelanau County.
Public comment, we have none, and those staff comments, all right. Any commissioner comments, Commissioner Robert,
Nope, nothing at this time.
all right, Mr. Rush,
No, I'll pass for now.
all right, Mr. Miller,
Nothing.
Mr. Nixon,
Nothing?
Mr. Black, Mr. McDonald. All right, so mine as well, so that we are adjourned.